Irma, as we all know, continues to move towards South Florida, expecting to see dangerous winds by tomorrow there. And the storm expected to make landfall on Sunday. World News Tonight anchor David Muir is leading our coverage on the ground all weekend, and he's here with us this morning. Good morning, David.
Robin, good morning to you. And as you heard Ginger point out, South Florida and all of Miami now bracing for a Category 4 hurricane. A direct hit, winds up to 150 miles per hour or more. And as Ginger just pointed out, the real concern here, the storm surge several feet, up to 10 feet high perhaps. And one of the most troubling things about this hurricane is that right now some of the most populated areas of South Florida and here in Miami, it's expected will be on the wrong side, the most damaging side of this hurricane. So we are watching it very closely, obviously. And overnight, 2 a.m., our phones all went off here with official hurricane warnings now in place for Miami and South Florida. Now, overnight, we're getting word of catastrophic damage coming in from Turks and Caicos. That was the real concern there as well, being on the wrong side of the hurricane, churning as we wait for more images there. There's also new images coming in from the U.S. military, now involved in the Caribbean. New images of U.S. Navy sailors actually helping the critically injured, bringing them to St. Croix in the U.S. Virgin Islands for treatment. New pictures from St. Martin, just devastation as far as the eye can see. That island could be hit again, unfortunately, by Hurricane Jose, which is next in the pipeline. Hotels destroyed, an estimated 6,000 Americans actually still stuck there. I talked to the Prime Minister of Barbuda overnight, who said more than 90% of that island simply destroyed. Hotels, buildings gone. And he told me the effort there today is to simply get everyone on that island off, to evacuate the entire island before Jose hits again. For late details on Turks and Caicos and reports of calls from Americans who are there back home to their families, let's turn to ABC's James Longman. He's live with us this morning from Nassau. James, good morning.
Good morning, David. These tiny islands are dealing with one of the biggest hurricanes they've ever seen. And no matter what the preparations, this monster storm is causing huge damage.
The latest to be swallowed by Irma. Overnight, Turks and Caicos devastated. A small island home to nearly 35,000 people, battered with rolling blackouts, shredded rooftops and flooded streets.
Well, we have seen nothing but worse in the last hour and a half.
165-mile-per-hour winds ravaging this hotel.
The thought of needing a life jacket is not the most comforting thing.
Tourists barricading doors, even hunkering down in bathrooms.
We made 2 bunkers, one in here, one in here.
It's only getting worse.
Using anything to keep out of danger. Colorado native Kelsey Priests broke down in tears after speaking to her family back home as Irma loomed over the island.
And then all of a sudden you're calling to say goodbye in case you don't have a chance to.
This morning, islands across the Caribbean dealing with the aftermath of the now 600-mile-wide storm. Look at the level of devastation in St. Martin. Homes leveled. These shipping containers tossed, boats slamming together like toys. In Barbuda, which has been completely decimated by Irma, volunteers evacuating stranded islanders by private yacht.
We're here in the Bahamas. We're expecting landfall sometime tonight. We can feel the wind picking up here. And the thing is these islands sit very, very close to the water, so the worry is that storm surge coming in. David?
All right, you and the crew stay safe there, James. We certainly appreciate it. And back here in Florida this morning, we should point out that all public schools here in Miami have been closed straight through Monday at least. That's the word this morning, Robin. And I got to tell you, coming out to this live report for GMA this morning, before the sun even came up, we passed several lines. All you could see were the taillights of cars lining the roads here. People lined up already this morning throughout South Florida trying to get gasoline. And as you know, we've been reporting for a couple of days now about the shortage of gas. Some gas stations already running empty.
And we're going to talk about that with the governor in a little bit, David. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.
Janice, if it took a right turn right now, Florida would be in better shape.
Yeah, but it's not going to, unfortunately, because all those computer models that we keep telling you about, they're in very good agreement that now the Keys in South Florida are going to take a direct hit from this storm. Also want to make mention we have Jose out there in the Atlantic, a major hurricane, and Katia in the Gulf of Mexico, not affecting the U.S. right now. Hurricane warnings in the red shaded areas. All of those areas are going to start to see the conditions start to go downhill tomorrow morning, and watches in the orange areas there. Also storm surge warnings all around the South Florida coast and the Keys, where we could get upwards of 10 feet of storm surge, especially on the right side of this storm, depending on where it makes landfall. So Cat 4 right now, the storm is actually going through structural changes. It's trying to strengthen again. So we're only 2 miles shy of a Cat 5. I'm not ruling out the possibility that it gets there again, because there's a lot of very warm water ahead of it. In some cases, 90-degree temperatures in front of the storm with not a lot of land interaction. As we go into Saturday and Sunday, we're thinking a landfall Saturday, Sunday night, or rather Saturday night into Sunday. And as I mentioned, these are the two reliable forecast models, both of them coming into very good agreement that the center of this storm is going to come on top of South Florida and scrape up the whole coast of Florida over the next couple of days. And then, of course, we're going to watch the Carolinas and Georgia and Tennessee as the storm continues to move north and eastward. There's our GFS model moving right on top of South Florida. That is worst case scenario right there. Worst of the storm surge, worst of the winds, worst of the rains. Catastrophic. Back to you.
All right, Janice, it looked for a while like the West Coast was going to dodge a bullet because it was moving to the east, but now it's right smack dab up the spine of the state.
So scary. All right, thank you, Janice.
Good morning. Welcome to your new day. We are following breaking news here in Miami. Unfortunately, Hurricane Irma is heading right for us at this hour. The storm is scarring every place she touches in the Caribbean. So far, we've seen each chain of islands get hurt. Cuba is next in the storm's path. We have the best proof and predictions for you this morning about what is most likely. South Florida right now is under a hurricane warning. It looks like it's going to be a Category 4. That's 155 miles an hour of winds that you can get. They can be sustained. You can get gusts that are even greater. The models are calling for a hit somewhere in South Florida sometime Sunday. You got to be vague because things change. As it gets closer, changes less. So this could be the last beautiful and tranquil morning that you see from South Florida. Now, to every man and woman, every official and first responder, all have the same message. If you have been told to evacuate, do it now. And those who aren't going to evacuate, those who must shelter in place, have a plan. What does that mean? Supplies for 72 hours. Anticipate that you could have no power for 3 days. That's how long it may take to get it restored, to get help to you. Take a look at the map. You can see where evacuations are underway in Florida. And just because your county may not have an evacuation order in place right now, that doesn't mean it's going to stay that way. So please check. Keep watching CNN, keep going to the site, go to your local news sites, and take a look at the maps and do what you need to do. Lots of people are already getting out of Dodge. We'll show you the pictures of the roadways. It's chaotic, it's difficult, but it may be the difference in being safe and not being safe. Obviously, they're all headed north. Florida's governor shutting down offices. Schools are shut down. Colleges, even some hospitals have been closed. Miami is a storm-savvy place. There's no question about that. Much of the construction is newer and built to storm specs, but 150-mile-an-hour winds are no joke. 20 feet or more of storm surge is no joke. It can easily overwhelm the best defenses, Allison, and that is the message. If you can get out, do it.
Yeah, so Chris, 10 people have already been killed by Hurricane Irma, and that number is expected to rise as it hits more populated areas. The storm is hammering Turks and Caicos. Here are some video taken overnight. The wind, as you can see, the torrential rain has caused widespread destruction. Now the Bahamas and Cuba are bracing for the worst. They are next in line to be hit by Irma. The Red Cross says the storm has already battered 1.2 million people, but 26 million more are in its path. And as if that is not bad enough, there's another hurricane on Irma's heels. So we are now keeping a close watch on Hurricane Jose. CNN is using all of our global resources to bring you up-to-the-minute coverage of Hurricane Irma, beginning with CNN meteorologist Chad Myers. Give us the latest projections at this hour, Chad.
It's going to hit the Florida Keys first, and then it goes up into the Everglades. That's where it hits the United States. Right now, it's still in very warm water, 155 miles per hour. And I know it says Cat 4 behind me here. Cat 5 is 157. Okay, split hairs there for me. This is still a very dangerous storm. Can't take your eyes off it. This is not a Cat 1. This is Cat 4. This is serious. This is a 20-foot storm surge and wind gusts along the Keys, still at about 145 miles per hour as it makes landfall and then moves up into the Everglades and right through the spine of Florida, right through central Florida, and even by the time it gets to Orlando, it may still have winds of around 105. There's your landfall through the Keys. Miami going to get an onshore flow, going to fill up Biscayne Bay with a storm surge, a big storm surge. Let me go to the European model because we talked about European American all day yesterday. The European has been outperforming on this particular storm. Now, the American did great on the 2015 snowstorm, so you still have to give it some props. But here is the European model, Saturday, 6 a.m. Wind gusts in Miami. We'll focus on Miami now, and then I will look at the rest of the state in a little bit. Miami, by Saturday, 3 o'clock, you're going to see wind gusts of 50. By 8 o'clock, you're already to the hurricane. And here comes the eye of the hurricane down there through the Keys. Hurricane gusts in Miami, 75 miles per hour or more. Same story for Naples and Fort Myers. Now we run the storm to 2 p.m. Miami, you're absolutely 100 miles per hour or more. So are the Everglades, but no one really lives there. Everglades City, but still, the Keys getting out of it, but you saw a wind gust to 145 somewhere around Key Colony Beach, maybe Robbie's Marina, Worldwide Sportsman. If you live there, you know exactly what I'm talking about. I go there every single year. There's the wind through the central part of Lake Okeechobee. Watch the flooding possible here. We talked about the governor yesterday lowering the level of that lake, but with a wind gust over 100, who knows what's going to go on there. And then finally, here we are, Monday, 2 o'clock in the morning, a little after midnight. The entire state covered by hurricane force gusts. Not one person will probably not see a hurricane force gust here across parts of Florida. And then it gets into Georgia and South Carolina. There will be significant onshore flow. There will be flooding in Charleston. There'll be flooding in Savannah. There'll be flooding in Jacksonville, just like we saw with Matthew. Guys, back to you.
Boy, Chad, I'll tell you, and I have so much respect for what you do, but I've never wanted you to be more wrong than I do right now. But I know the models are telling you what they're telling you, and you make a good point that we heard from the first responders yesterday. There's so much water down here.
Appreciate it. We must go back to Miami and rejoin our Isa Suarez. She is standing by. We have reestablished connection. Isa.
Thanks very much, Aisha. Yes, I was introducing you to Michael Joseph, who is the president of the Antigua and Barbuda Red Cross. He got a look at the damage in Barbuda on Thursday, and he joins me on the phone now from St. John's in the U.S. Virgin Islands. Michael, thank you very much once again for taking time to speak to us. Before we talk about what you've seen in St. John's, give us your perspective of the situation in Barbuda, because I remember quite vividly seeing those aerial pictures and hearing the Prime Minister talk of the destruction on the ground.
Yeah. To be honest with you, I think everybody had the same feeling once the Prime Minister broke news of what he saw. I think what I wasn't prepared for was the images that were coming out of Barbuda isn't anything in comparison to the real life feeling and the real life images that you get to see for yourself once you get into Barbuda. I'm talking about, I would have said that 100% of Barbuda's infrastructure was completely devastated. We're talking about, houses, concrete structures that were literally pulled apart by Hurricane Irma. And the devastation, it's none that I've ever seen before, none that I've ever experienced. I can't fathom how such a storm, a Category 5 hurricane, could have done things like this. And I had the opportunity to speak with a lot of the residents who would have went through it. And the stories that they're telling are quite horrifying. As a matter of fact, many of them are saying that for what they experienced, that wasn't just a hurricane, that was a hurricane with tornadoes in it. And this is where the devastation really came from their experience and their explanations.
And Michael, you are in many ways our eyes and ears on the ground. Tell us those stories of people you have been speaking to. You were saying that almost 100% level of destruction there. What stories are you hearing from the people on the ground?
So some of the stories, people speaking about the, one part of the roof got torn off, and then they had to go into the cupboards with their family, with their kids, and they had to put blankets and pillows against them just so that they wouldn't move, and water were coming in. And as soon as the ice started to pass, they ran out into the open. And it just seemed like at that point, everybody decided to run out of their building. And they, from one of the stories, they jumped into the back of a pickup truck and decided to drive to the shelter. And as they were driving, this is when the back end of the eye came, and there were 40-foot containers that were just being thrown across the road. Huge trees that are hundreds of years old were just being ripped and snapped in the middle, and houses were just being lifted up and just thrown into the sea. I mean, these aren't stories that you expect to hear that people are experiencing. These are things that you see only in the movies.
Yeah. Utterly harrowing. Michael Joseph there joining us now on the phone. He's the president of Antigua and Barbuda Red Cross. Michael, appreciate you taking the time.